Bronson, good seeing you again, man. It's I think I met you. Was in Nebraska? I thought I ran into.
Yeah, Nebraska around your birthday. We had steak for your birthday party, and
That's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. How old was I then? God, I'm 50. I think I turned 53 then. Was it last year? Yeah, I guess it was last January one of the last things I spoke at with one of Jamie Seaman's things. So cool.
Yep.
Well, why don't you just get started by telling folks a little bit about yourself for those who aren't aware. You got coach on your shirt, so
yeah,
we're gonna assume there's some coaching stuff going on there.
There's definitely some coaching stuff. What I do is fitness and health coaching. So I do online coaching, I do in-person coaching, group fitness, personal training, that kind of stuff. I used to own a CrossFit gym, sold that in September, and have been moving to the online arena ever since. COVID obviously has been playing havoc with some of that, but that's kind of where my home is. I'm 48 years old. Your podcast with Joe Rogan actually is what got me on Carnivore. My wife at the time came home and said, "Hey, I heard about this crazy thing. You should try it." Two reasons, mostly because I had epic stomach issues. I was the guy, you've probably heard, one of those guys that traveled. I couldn't go anywhere without toilet paper, tissue paper, paper towels, something, because I never knew when an emergency was going to happen, and I needed to be ready for that. So it kind of controlled a lot of aspects of my life. So a few months into that problem went away. And I've been doing it ever since. So that was 45 at the time, 48 now, almost 50. So we're going on 3 years now.
Yeah, and I just crossed over 4 years into this myself, and so similar. I mean, I think I didn't have a ton of health issues at the time, but I mean, digestion definitely markedly improved for me. I saw tremendous improvements in recovery, sports performance. The aches and pains that I still had while on a low carb ketogenic diet were improved beyond that. So. Yeah. This is obviously this sort of home gym, home exercise. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I invested on a home gym years and years ago. I've had tons of weights and all kinds of equipment, stuff that I use and want to use. And I made that a priority to purchase that over the years. And so for those people that, aren't in that situation, many people aren't, they just don't either have the room or they didn't have the finances or they didn't have they just didn't think about it. Can you be healthy without a bunch of fancy equipment and without a huge gym membership?
Absolutely. The basis of all fitness is movement and general strength. I think are the two things that most people need to have and understand. And you can move. Your body is weight, right? The body weight exercises is a thing. There are definitely levels of strength that you can develop with just your body. If you look at gymnasts, the things that they do. They lift weights, but most of the work that a gymnast does, they're arguably the strongest pound for pound athletes out there in the things that they can do, the way they can control their bodies, and it's all body weight. So there's plenty of things that you can do from a metabolic conditioning perspective, from a strength perspective, from a flexibility and mobility perspective, that you can just do at home with nothing, just yourself, if you really have to. Yeah, it's more about a person's commitment to making something happen. If you want something to happen, you'll figure out a way to make it go.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, I've been on vacation where there's nothing. I'll go find rocks outside and lift rocks and throw rocks. And you find a 50-pound rock and there's a hell of a lot of stuff you can do with it. And that's pretty damn cheap. Some of the body weight stuff. I think to me it depends on what the exercise. I mean, push-ups obviously are one that everybody's familiar with, and you can actually develop pretty decent triceps, chest, shoulder sort of stuff just through push-ups and the variations, and you can. But I think some of the other ones become harder to do. Like one-legged deadlifts and stuff like that. I mean, it's just there's a lot of skill that goes to that makes it a little more challenging. Whereas weights and resistance becomes easier. So CrossFit. What was the decision to distance yourself from that? I mean, was it mostly the COVID stuff, or were you just finding that's kind of run its course and no longer interests you? Or
no, I'm still I'm a level 3 CrossFit coach. I think CrossFit is the best package of fitness methodology and concepts that's out there. There are, like anything, you look at any sport and there's good and there's bad. I think that the general structure of what CrossFit does for people can't be beat. It provides the greatest variety, the greatest ability to meet people where they are. So I'm not necessarily distanced from CrossFit at all. I still do in-person stuff at a local CrossFit gym. It was just selling the gym. So I ran a gym for 5 years and was getting to a point where I realized that the one thing about CrossFit is it is very niche. It's very specific. And my view of fitness, particularly after learning about carnivore and getting way more into nutrition than I ever thought I would, was bigger than just fitness and exercise. It included mental health. It included mindset. It included nutrition and kind of the whole package. And I couldn't do just that with the gym. So I wanted to expand.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately before the former owner Greg Glassman sort of self-imploded with his social media faux pas. I was actually going to meet with him. I had an appointment to go meet with Greg Glassman to talk about stuff around CrossFit Health because
oh my gosh, that would have been amazing.
Karen Thompson, who's the I believe she still is, and we've had her on the podcast here. She was in charge of the CrossFit Health or oversaw that, and so I was supposed to take a meeting with them. It kind of got with the coronavirus stuff. It was becoming a little more challenging. And then, of course, he basically shot himself in the foot more or less. And that all exploded. And so at that time, I was considering doing some CrossFit stuff and kind of leaned down to do that. And then they locked the gym down. And I was like, man, I just didn't want to deal with that. It was just like, I just don't want to, I don't have the equipment to do what I want to do. So I experimented with being lighter for a while, got down about 40 pounds lighter than I am now. And, got real lean. And then I decided, well, I'm going to go back to doing some strength stuff for a while. So that's where I'm at currently.
Yeah.
What, and this is the other thing about CrossFit. I mean, a lot of people see the CrossFit Games athletes, and I know that people try to distance themselves from competition versus what is CrossFit with regards to just overall health. And there's a difference between competition. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So the tenet of CrossFit is giving people an option that they can fit in their lifestyle to do fitness, something that they can do. And the basis of what makes the CrossFit methodology work for a broad range of people is what we call scalability, right? The ability to scale, modify, and change an exercise so that a person can get the most out of it from where they are. If they've never lifted a barbell before, we can scale with dumbbells. We can scale with body weight. We can give people modifications to an exercise that's prescribed. We have this term prescribed and scaled, prescribed at a certain movement or weight or something like that. But if you've never walked into a gym before, we're not going to expect you to do that, right? There's this concept of improve your technique, then perform it consistently, and then you can improve your intensity, increase your intensity. And that is how we apply that to the everyday person. The CrossFit Games athletes, the people that go to that level, they're professional athletes. That would be, the expectation of you're going to walk into a gym as an everyday person and be expected to do the kind of stuff that those people are doing is the same expectation as I would have walking onto an NFL team and saying, hey, I'm going to be a linebacker just because, right? So there's such a completely different level of focus and intensity and time and experience that goes into that it's great from a marketing perspective to get the brand and the name of CrossFit out there. And I'm glad that over the past few years, CrossFit has actually gotten away from that a little bit, because I think it did take away from the message of this is about helping real people. And they doing that with CrossFit Health, working with doctors and working closer with the medical industry, changing their marketing and the videos and the things you see online away from the games a lot and more into the stories of the 65, 70-year-old grandpa, playing with their kid or, doing things at home, or the guy who had type 2 diabetes and weighed 300 pounds and now he's down, no longer on medication and doing stuff. Like those kinds of stories, I think is really what it's all about.
Let's talk a little bit. Okay, so as a CrossFit proponent, as a CrossFit instructor, as someone who presumably does CrossFit or has done CrossFit, one of the concerns about low carb diets, ketogenic diets, carnivore diets is, you're just not going to have any energy to do workouts.
Sure.
What has been your experience? How can you comment on that?
So for me, I like to explain this when I work with people. I explain this as there's a general adaptation. And I don't know if there's any science behind this. This is just my experience and what I kind of see with people when I work with them. There's a general adaptation for everyday life. And if you're doing high intensity workouts, if you're doing CrossFit workouts, then there's a second level where you're pushing your body beyond the normal. So it's going to take a little bit longer for your body to kind of adapt to that level of being fat adapted. So for me, I was in my everyday life just doing normal things. It took me about 6 to 8 weeks to feel like, okay, this is normal. I'm not tired. I'm kind of out of that keto flu, that initial drop of everything. On the workout side, it took me 8 to 12 weeks to start seeing things improving, get better. It was, my workouts suck. I've got no energy. I'm losing strength, all this kind of stuff. And then somewhere around 10 to 12 weeks, I started realizing, hey, that workout wasn't so bad. I just lifted more than in the deadlift than I had in the last 6 months. I just did movements that I haven't ever been able to do. I was working for a couple of years on getting bar muscle ups. And it wasn't until after I started doing keto, I actually had a shoulder injury. The shoulder injury healed. And then I started doing bar muscle ups, and it was like, wait, what is going on? All this stuff is happening. I actually tracked a little bit after a few months, and I have 4 or 5 benchmark workouts and 4 or 5 benchmark lifts that all improved. So I got stronger. My conditioning got better, and at the same time, this is one of the other secondary reasons I started is I had gotten tired of the bulk to get stronger and get weak to get leaner. That whole cycle just drove me crazy. Like, I don't understand why I have to get fat to get strong and then get super skinny and get below the weight I want to, where I want to be just to get lean. And in this whole time, all my strength got better. My conditioning got better. I lost body fat percentage and I gained like 5 pounds of muscle. I was able to cut and add mass at the same time. And it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
And I think that, again, that is something that I've seen repeatedly. I've seen it myself. I've been doing this for a long time now. And I echo your experience with the longer adaptation period for specific athletic endeavors. I think it depends on the athlete and it depends on the activity. I think, like we know that from studies on this with ketogenic metabolisms, basically that sort of switch to go from more glucose dependent to more fat adapted, I suppose, is 3 to 4 weeks based on work with guys like Volek and Finney. But when it comes to specific athletes, I've seen many more weeks to even several months before, I'd say I tell people even up to 6 months before you can kind of fully switch. And then once you do that, it's been pretty impressive. Now, I always, because this is what I'll be in there and I'll be doing workouts and I'll be doing something that some people think is reasonably impressive, particularly given my age, and they'll say, well, what if you just add a little bit of carbs in there? What about doing that? And I did that stuff when I was on a ketogenic diet. I tried the targeted, the cyclic, the carb loading, the carb back in the back night, the back loading, the carb nights, all that stuff. I did all of those things, and I personally never got any benefit. That I could perceive that was objective in the gym. And I clearly noted gastrointestinal issues. I clearly noted energy dips. I clearly noted feeling more inflamed. So it just didn't do it for me. And have you experimented with that? Like some people say, well, add a little honey here, add a piece of fruit here before, pre-workout. Is that something you've tried to experiment with? Is that something that's been effective for you, or have you found it not to be effective or not done it?
Yeah, I haven't personally tried it too much. I've just been too happy not having it. I have worked with people. I do know people that have done it, and I'd say mixed reviews. I think there's a placebo effect to some of it. I think there may be something to be said for, if you kind of look at it like a car, where fat is your gas and carbs might be your octane booster. So there might be something to be said there for that initial, maybe as a pre-workout kind of thing. But the one thing that I have found, and from looking at the research that I've looked at and talking to the people that I've talked to, your body can make glucose from fat. So why do you need the carbs, right? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and certainly amino acids as well would be probably a more readily source of gluconeogenic precursors. But the way I seem to look at it is, even if there is a small short-term benefit, I think over time, and this is what I find, as I look at the long game, the longevity game here, as far as athletic longevity, when I was eating carbohydrates, it wasn't that my performance was necessarily bad per se. It's just that the sort of the collateral effects of that, the inflammation, the poor recovery, the joint pain, the digestive stuff, the sort of the mental ups and downs on whether I wanted to train hard or not were overall a detriment, relative to any short-term improvement in a single particular exercise or exercise workout. And so when we look at performance over time, I think the fact that, maybe you sleep better, maybe you don't have as much oxidative stress, which there's data to support that without carbohydrates. Perhaps your recovery's better. Obviously the fuel you're putting in your body, the structural material with all the meat and quality animal foods is just superior. I think that over time adds up to consistent performance over time. And that's what we're looking at for most people. It's how what's my year going to look like? So
not even consistent performance, but more volume. So if you look at the lack of inflammation, the faster recovery, those two things alone allow you to do more work. I went from working out, almost, was in my mid to late 40s, working out 3 times a week and feeling like crap every day, waking up all day long, go to a workout, feel like crap afterwards, get up the next morning. I spent, I was one of those guys who was like, I'm getting old. I need to warm up for 20 minutes before I can actually go do my workout. And then I need to do something afterwards forever to try to make sure that I can move the next day. I went from that to 5 days a week and I feel friggin' fantastic. So I'm almost doubling the amount of volume and amount of work that I can get in every week. And I have nothing negative about it. So just that in and of itself is progress.
Yeah, one of the things that has emerged in the last, I'd say certainly the last decade has been the role of, movement, dynamic warm-ups, mobility drills, mobility warm-ups. I found that as I switched diets, the degree of stiffness I had, the tight areas I had, the things that would impede performance became minimal to non-existent. And so, whereas I can remember going to the gym and I was going to do a set of, some kind of Olympic lift, and I go in there, start doing snatches, and I'd warm up with the bar, basically, maybe do a couple squats and then right into it. And then I remember the guy next to me was literally laying on the platform for like 45 minutes, rolling on foam rollers, doing, it was like a 45-minute warm up. And I'm like, done. I'm looking.
Yeah, your warm up should not be longer than your workout, right? That's.
Yeah, have you found an improvement in either yourself or in any of your coaches in just general mobility, just irrespective of any extra warming up and mobility work?
I know. I feel like I have. I've always worked on mobility, so that's maybe something I was already strong in. But I feel like I can do more. For me, I see it mostly when I'm teaching a class, when I'm working with a client or working with a group of people, and there's a question or there's something I need to demonstrate. They used to be before, like, I'm not going to show you that. I'll have someone else who just went through the warm up and is ready, demonstrate, and I'll talk you through it. Now I can just hop in, no warm up, no whatever, and just do it. And I'm not as concerned that I'm going to do something negative to myself. So for me, yes, I definitely think that's the case.
Yeah, and I'll go to Pavel Tsatsouline, who's the famous kettlebell guy, the Russian what is it, RKC?
Yep.
Founder, and I think he's now in Strong First or something. But anyway, one of his books, I remember him reading. He was talking about mobility and the ability to be able to perform on demand, so to speak. Yes. And he uses the analogy of a rabbit being pursued by a fox, and the fox doesn't. The rabbit doesn't say, "Hang on, time out, got to warm up, stretch, mobility,
right?
We run."
Right.
They just go. And then you see the same thing with kids. I mean, the kids out there, when they play, they hit the door and they run. They don't sit there and stretch for 10 minutes and
Absolutely.
Up on the treadmill. And I think that, call me crazy, but I think we should be able to generally do that throughout our life, without having to, I think, you think about it, and unfortunately we live in a society where it doesn't happen very long. But if you encounter some sort of badness, you're walking down the street, somebody tries to mug you, he's not going to give you a chance to stretch and warm up. You've got to be able to run, fight, punch, whatever, kick, scream, yell, get away, whatever has to happen. And so I think most people couldn't. Most people can't. And I just, I like when I'm walking around, I'm like, I could run right now. I could go run into a full sprint without anything. Now, it may not be 100%. You know, we just had a sprinter on yesterday, Cynthia Montaloni, and you know, she's a world-class, you know, over 40 sprinter, and she's like, we go 90% pretty easily without,
Sure.
without too much, not going to that 100%.
Yeah. For training purposes, you're not training at 100% most of the time. You're training in that, 50% to 80, 85, 90%. So I think for anybody to be able to just do that on demand is absolutely where we should be at. And that goes back to the consistency, the frequency of the things you're doing to get yourself ready. That goes to how you're training. Movement is important. Even if you're exercising regularly, if you're not doing movements correctly, if you're not engaging the right muscles and doing the things to stimulate yourself properly, you're not going to be able to transfer that to your functional and everyday life. So then you still don't have that.
Okay, let's talk about as a coach who does this for a living. What are the common errors or problems you see that are common in just people in general? And then I don't, if we can, I think you can extrapolate this to this community. We're all still humans and subject to human physiology and biomechanics. And so, what are the common problems that you see most often with people?
From a physical standpoint, from a movement perspective, I think the two biggest things are lack of the ability to utilize and having a weak posterior chain. So weak backs, weak butt, weak hamstrings, not understanding how to use those muscles, because we sit in that seated position all day long, and we don't need to do anything with our backside because it's supported all the time. So when you ask someone to bend over, they don't know how to engage their hips properly. That's all lower back. When you have someone who's got knee pain, hip pain, lower back pain, it's probably because they don't know how to utilize the muscles that provide support for the whole backside of their body. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Along with that is the upper back and the shoulder, rounded posture, shoulders back, people with shoulder issues, shoulder impingement, shoulder pain, neck pain, because we're sitting in this position all the time, doing things in front of a computer, on our phone, whatever it is, and not understanding why we need good posture and how to continually maintain it throughout the day. I think overall upper back posture and the hip and posterior chain issues are the most common.
What is something, outside of joining a cross, is there something we can do just day to day to sort of mitigate that? We could run down a list of a whole bunch of different exercises. I don't think that's what we're here for, but there's a ton of different things that you can do on your own, whether it be with bands in the open air with just your arms and your body weight. There are programs out there. I could give you some products. I don't know if you've ever heard of Crossover Symmetry. Is a great tool for upper back posture and shoulder pain. They have the thing, what's it called? Get scap jacked, right? Is kind of their motto. Get your scapula strong so you don't have that shoulder back pain. Is a great tool. It's a band system. But in general, when you do work out, try to do things that I call are transferable. So if you're going to train a certain way, I have a phrase when I had my gym, is that everything we train trains everything we train. So if I'm training in one movement, I need to remember that there's things in this movement that I'm going to do in another movement. There's things in this exercise that I'm trying to not just train so I can do this workout. Working out isn't about working out. Working out is about taking the things you learn and how to move your body so that when you're in your everyday life, that's how you do it, so that you can stay safe, live long, and be functional and enjoy your freedoms. Let's just say you have the average person who says, I just want to be in shape. How do you direct them? What would a week-long, month-long, diet, nutrition, lifestyle thing look like? What's the whole package here?
So on the simplification side of things, we say for carnivore, eat meat, drink water, add salt, right? That's kind of the mantra. I think from a fitness perspective, it's very similar. It's move weight, move often, move well, and rest. So because you never know where someone's going to be coming from, so you don't know exactly what to give them. But I would say you need to move weight. You need to move your body. You need to move dumbbells. You need to move bands. You need to move plates, bags, stones, something. You need to move your body and make your muscles work. You need to move often. It needs to be frequent. It needs to be consistent. And it can be 5 minutes. at a super high intensity. It can be an hour at a super low intensity. It needs to be varied. Like, you got to do something. Our bodies work in a lot of different ranges, and we need to practice working and doing things in those ranges. And then moving well, again, transferability, doing things that are going to help you in your day-to-day life, not just focusing on what I'm doing for this workout. So learning how to move your body properly, put your joints in the right position so that you can be stable and safe and a low risk of injury. And then I think the one thing that people tend to forget, particularly when they're getting started, they want to jump in and go crazy, is rest, right? Growth happens during the rest period, not during the work period. So you need to give yourself time to rest. Don't overwork yourself. Don't overtrain. It's okay to take a day off. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing bad's going to happen. From a nutrition perspective, I think the three keywords that I use are nutrient density, bioavailability, and satiety. And if you focus on those three things, you're probably going to be eating a lot of animal meat and feeling really good.
Yeah, that's I've had, so just in the last few days, we've had a person it's kind of interesting. She's a carnivore. She's got the world record for the longest yoga pose, downward dog. She did that as a carnivore. And then we just had a sprinter on. It's mostly carnivore. And one of the things the common themes was, maybe long, slow, steady cardio is not the best solution. And then lots of stretching, static stretching, particularly beyond the typical range of motion, is probably detrimental. Would you share those sentiments?
I would. I think the stretching one is a little subjective, depending on when you do. So I recommend that people stretch after their workouts, not before their workouts. From a static stretching is after. Dynamic stretching, a little bit of foam rolling, maybe movement is more important before the workout if you're going to do something. The cardio thing, I always shy away from saying that any one thing is good or bad, or because it may work for somebody for a time. There may be somebody who's at a place where walking on a treadmill for an hour is actually doing them something good, and that's good for them. Now, that probably won't last forever, and they'll need to transition to something down the road, but for them right now, it works. So I won't say that steady state start cardio isn't necessarily a bad thing or worthless. It's probably worthless for me. It doesn't do as much for me because I've been doing it for a while. My conditioning needs a little bit more than that at this point. So I think and this is one of the cool things I like about CrossFit, is one of the tenets of CrossFit is constantly varied. So, and it's not constantly varied. I think people get confused with that being random. It's not random. Constantly varied means you're attacking and approaching all those different ranges of the way that your body uses fuel, right? The metabolic phases. And then as well as how our body works from the difference between a power workout or a speed workout and an endurance workout or a stamina workout. Intervals versus long versus really short, really high intense, all those types of things. So varying things I think is important. I think everything kind of has a place.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Some people ask how many sets and reps you should do. I often say all of them, and I think for me, when I think about what's important to me as an aging athlete, I want to make sure I maintain strength, preserve muscle mass. I want to make sure that I can, have some degree of cardiovascular conditioning, and I want to be able to move explosively. And so and sprinting and all this. So I incorporate a little bit of those things throughout the week. It's just peppered in there. I try to make sure I check all those boxes, during the week. And sometimes, you incorporate more than one modality in a single workout, as you know. And so do you find an order of a way to do this now? Like the way I like to do it personally, some sort of get warm, then I end up doing more of the explosive stuff early on. Then maybe then it may be strength based, and then I might finish out with conditioning stuff. If I'm going to do them all in the same workout, that's the order that I found to be most productive. But and I think there's some data that supports that. Do you have any thoughts on how to structure workouts with regard to that, and what kind of things we want to make sure we're touching on throughout the week or the month?
Yeah, so that's a rabbit hole. Basically, so I kind of look at there's two phases to a warm up. There's general and specific. So getting your body ready for movement in general, to getting that fight or flight turned on, then doing something specifically to target getting your central nervous system engaged in the movements and things you're going to actually be doing. So once that warm up is done, I like to do either the speed, strength, power stuff first, and then I do the conditioning, the metabolic conditioning after, and then some kind of a cool down. That's my general structure for sessions when I do them.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to me. Like I said, I find that your nervous system works better earlier on, just when you're fresh, and you can hit that, you can do that speed and explosive stuff a little better early on. Are you, and this, I don't know that maybe CrossFit does this a little bit. I know we talked with Cynthia yesterday about post-activation potentiation type work, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with, heavy squat into a jump or something like that.
Yeah,
It's more for performance based.
It's not something that's really covered a lot in CrossFit stuff. There are other people that have added their takes to a CrossFit overall program. So you've heard of Westside, right? Conjugate, Mark Bell, and he's Westside, right? And they've got some people that are really into the Conjugate side of things from a programming methodology perspective that have taken some of that stuff into applying it to CrossFit methodology. So kind of merging the two. So it's been I've followed it for about 3 years now, and it's amazing stuff. So getting into variations of lifts, you don't see a lot of CrossFit gyms doing wide stance box squats and Zercher squats and sled work and all this other kind of stuff. But the gyms that are utilizing the Conjugate programming, they're seeing a great increase in performance from their members without injury, right? The amount of injury and the amount of overwork that a lot of people get in CrossFit traditionally, because the mentality there, and this is the dark side, the mentality of a lot of CrossFit people is to just go hard, do everything as much as possible. And what I like about the Conjugate CrossFit hybrid is it's about attacking the things that are going to be beneficial and then moving on to something else, right? But not leaving everything in the dark at the same time. So I like it.
Yeah, and I like I said, I followed the Louis Simmons and the Westside stuff for years. As an old guy who used to powerlift many years ago, I was very interested in that stuff. And I think Mark Bell, I think he did spend a little time at Louis' place back in Columbus, Ohio. But so what has been the evolution of CrossFit since you have new ownership? Have you seen is there any changes coming down the pike that you're
I haven't, because I don't own a gym anymore. I'm not in as much of that information. So all the affiliate owner emails and boards and things like that, I don't have access to anymore. I do, from my initial impression, I'm very happy. The people that I have talked to, there's something to be said for someone taking over the company who has been very successful at a very high level in business and didn't get into this by accident. I think Glassman was great with what he did, and he built because he had a lot of good people around him helping him build it. But I think he fell into it. There was never a plan, I don't think, for this to be as big as it was. And then the second thing is the new owner was also a gym owner, was also a CrossFit box owner. So he's been on a lot of different sides, and I think he understands the struggles that the box owners have had for a few years. And he has a direction and a vision that I think is from what I'm hearing is really good. I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and just for frame of reference, I think CrossFit is something like a $5 billion industry. So it's definitely a huge market, and so it's continuing. I assume continuing to grow worldwide. How obviously there's a lot of like there's some people use this thing. It's called the X3 bar. That's a band resistance. There's a lot of, I guess, flourishing of some of these home gym products that are out there now. What do you see going on with that stuff? The things that are going to be, I mean, I haven't bought, I'm trying to think of the last time I bought something for the gym. I actually just bought a trap bar. So, I mean, that's okay. The last thing I bought. I haven't bought anything in about 6 or 7 years from that. Right. Is there any new thing that what's the latest and greatest thing you've seen that's going to be, that really is helpful for people?
I haven't seen anything new, really. I think the X bar is probably the only thing I've seen. I haven't really looked into it that much. I think honestly that for anybody looking to get stuff for their home gym, go with simple. Keep it simple. You don't need gadgets to get in shape. Like I said, if you had to, you don't need to get anything at all. Just find a program that's going to help you do it with your body. Bands are a basic way to start. Kettlebells are a great way to start. Dumbbells are a great way to start. For most people who have never done anything, or even who have done stuff in the past and just need to figure out a way to do stuff at home, I think kettlebells and dumbbells are probably your go-to. You can get a handful of those, and you can do a whole bunch of stuff that's going to get you in really good shape with just kettlebells and dumbbells.
Yeah, they make, and for those people who aren't familiar, they make some adjustable dumbbells where you can, you just
Select the weight.
Select the weight.
Yep.
You can go anywhere from 20 pounds up to even 100 pounds, depending on your capabilities, depending on the sets you have. And I had one of those a few years ago, but it kept sticking and falling apart and wouldn't hold the weights on. I was a little frustrated with it. So I just ended up, I think, throwing the damn thing in the trash. But so I didn't have good success with the one brand. I think I just got it at like, one of the sporting goods stores, and, probably I'm sure there's much better, more reliable ones out there. I remember when those first came out, I think there's a guy named, I think it was Jeff Everson, who was like the husband and coach of Corey Everson. One of the early Miss Olympias. And he was talking about those things. Yeah, he was talking about those things, gosh, 25 years ago, I think, something like that, as I recall. But, I'm sure they've improved in time.
You're making me feel old.
Well, I'm older than you, man. So I remember that stuff before. So, this is, like I said, I've been at this stuff for forever now. What about age? Do we, this is a thing that and it's kind of funny. I always, wait till you hit 30, man. Wait till you hit 40. Wait till you hit 50. And I've hit those numbers. And I'm like, I'm still good. I'm still going. Yeah. What's the deal as an older person, do we have to necessarily not train hard and take extra long recovery? Is that something, because you hear that as being told, but and again, my experience has been, if I don't feel good, I'm not going to train. But if I feel good, I'm going to train. I'm not going to take off extra time just because I'm old. What are your thoughts on that?
As we get older, it's more imperative that we do something to keep our body working. To me, it's simple. I don't understand why anybody would say otherwise. Sarcopenia is a real thing. The biggest issue, I have two grandparents that passed away in the last few years, and both of them, it was a struggle to watch them not be able to get out of their chair to give someone a hug, right? You have to go to them and lean over and give them a hug because they can't get out of their chair. It's like, no, it shouldn't be that way. When I go out, I'm going to be deadlifting the night before I die. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. So no, I do not think that as we get older, anything needs to slow down. There's something that will change, and there's a concept called the maximum recovery volume. And that's basically the amount of work that you do in any one session should not exceed your body's ability to recover from that session and continue to do that work again. So you shouldn't overwork yourself, and that level may decrease a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you intentionally pull back because you're afraid of something like that. The fear aspect of that is what I don't agree with.
Yeah, I saw this is going back maybe 2 years. Somebody sent me a snippet from, it was like a television advert. Well, it was like a TV news show talking about recommended exercise for old people. And they say old people should not squat. They should not deadlift. And it just makes my head want to explode when I see that stuff. What are your thoughts on old people not being able to do heavy compound lifts?
If they can't do that, then they can never sit down in a chair, take a crap, get in a car, pick up anything off the floor. What are they going to do? Right? Those are the movements. The whole idea, and we talked about this earlier, the whole idea is to train your body to be able to perform movements safely in real life. So if they're not doing those things at the gym or with a trainer or on their own, whatever it may be, then of course they're not going to be able to do those things. That's why fall risk is such an issue. Falls and broken hips and knees and slipping down stairs and all these other kinds of things, because we're as a society, we're telling our old people you can't do that. We're forcing an inability to live their lives. So it's a cognitive dissonance that I don't agree with.
Yeah, what is the like I said with well, oh yeah, this one I asked you about. Let's talk back to nutrition a little bit. So, what you eat is obviously important. What about when you eat, and how does that relate to working out? Do you find some people are big into fasted training, AM fasted training, particularly if it's, certain types of training? Some people feel like they do better with performance working out later. I know it's all over the place, but do you have is there anything you can say that adds to that?
Yeah, it is all over the place. And I think unless, and this may get me some interesting responses, unless you are at a point where performance on an athletic field in an athletic endeavor is what you're trying to get to, it doesn't matter. I think you eat when you're hungry, or if you want to fast, or if you want to do OMAD, or if you want to do intermittent fasting, whatever, have a blast, try it. If you feel like you get some benefit out of it, that's great. In general, get a routine that fits your lifestyle that you can maintain and be sustainable long-term. And that should be your guiding factor. Doesn't matter what else you do in there. As long as you're eating what you need to eat and you can find a way to fit it into a regular, here's what I'm doing, and I know I'm not going to miss, and I know I'm not going to fall off, and I know I'm going to be consistent, then that's way more effective and way more important than any of the other stuff.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, there's some, like I said, I think there's some maybe game day performance things that people might do, and I think probably the best advice I have on that is do what you've practiced, because you don't want any surprises.
Absolutely.
It's like, don't introduce novel food the day of a big competition, because you're not going to know how it treats you. And I know, like, it was a year ago or so when I went for the rowing world championships and I won that. I ate a big old T-bone, or not a T-bone. I had a 3-pound tomahawk steak about 4 hours before I competed, and that was knowing at least a little bit about physiology. I know that's when you eat a large protein meal, you see that spike in blood glucose about 3 to 4 hours post ingestion, rather than a carbohydrate based meal where you see that spike in about 30 minutes to 60 minutes typically.
Right.
So anyway, that was my sort of little bit of experience with that. We're seeing somebody saying, Alice just talking about 81-year-olds have had heart attacks and they're back in their training, going after it. Yeah. Is there any, like I said, we always see, this is the thing that always makes me laugh. It's like they always say contact your doctor before engaging in any sort of exercise program. And most doctors are clueless when it comes to exercise. I might say, you had a heart attack. Okay, what are you going to do now? I mean, there's no evidence that having a heart attack means you shouldn't exercise.
Right.
In fact, the cardiac rehab is exercise. So I mean, I find that a bit humorous. But do you have it, so you have people that have certain medical conditions? Do you have any words of advice for them?
Don't do it by yourself. Get a trainer. I think that's probably the first one. Find somebody who has experience working with either someone who's got the same or similar issues that you're dealing with, and they've got some success and experience in showing that they can work with people in that way. And don't rush it. Understand that it's going to take time. If you're dealing with a health issue, the health issue is more important than your feeling about how fit you are. So do what you can to take care of whatever the health issue that you're working through. And then you can worry about, if you want to worry about how much you can bench and how much you can squat and how fast you can run 100 meters, whatever it may be. So I think those are probably two biggest things.
Yeah. Speaking of running 100 meters, what are your thoughts on running sprints? Is that something everybody should be doing?
If you can run, absolutely. Throw it in the mix. I can't think of many movements, exercises, and modalities that people shouldn't be doing. I think if you have an opportunity and you can perform the movement, it's something that at some point you should play around with and see how it works. See if your body can handle it. Learn how to do something new. The more we play, the more we learn, the more elastic our brain is, and the ability to move and understand our body and improve that proprioception of how does my body work, that mind muscle connection, all those things. The more we do a variety of things, the better. We need to be adaptable.
Yeah, I mean, the only sort of caveat, I see some people, it seems to be some of these fitness girls that do these, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They do some exercise where it's like a combination where they're doing their lunges while they're doing curls, while they're doing,
right.
I mean, some of the exercise I see out there, I'm just laughing. I'm like, what are you trying to accomplish with this stuff? Is there, and this is one of the criticisms that CrossFit has had over the years is high rep snatches and stuff like that, or something like that, where you're doing an exercise that's inherently highly technique dependent, and you're doing it to a point of fatigue to where you often see the technique being compromised, and thus some people, and again, I think this is a delineation between the athlete and the day-to-day person, may end up with injuries with that. And I always found that I like to separate out strength training from conditioning. When I do both at the same time, I think I'm less effective at either of them. So my strength training workouts look like I'm lifting heavy. I'm giving myself adequate recovery. I'm not fatigued when I'm doing the max efforts or the near max efforts. And when I'm doing conditioning, I'm doing something that's not so technique dependent. And I'm not going to, if I mess up, like I'm not going to mess up sprinting all out on an Airdyne bike or an assault bike. I mean, there's just no skill in that. It's just go. Whereas if I'm trying to do something highly technical to fatigue, I could see where, you could have an error and then all of a sudden you got this labral injury. What are your thoughts on combining those types of things?
Yeah, I think that's where the level of experience and the mindset of the coaches and their understanding of the CrossFit methodology really come into play. It's not the movements themselves. So thinking about, there's a couple of things there. Thinking about the concept of the CrossFit class, we're trying to get as broad a range of stimulus to somebody in an hour's time. So there's a lot of things that get put into that session. And in that, volume is one of the things that we want to try to get. So volume and movement, that's where some of the high rep stuff comes into play. If it's done properly, following the technique, consistency, and then intensity mindset, for the most part, it's not any worse or any less safe than any other exercise or workout program out there. It just needs to be understood that the person's just to take responsibility. Am I doing something beyond my capabilities? Am I performing? And then it's also the coaches and the gym's responsibility to say, look, hey, your form is degraded to the point where we need to make a change, and then make that change. So there has to be, in order to improve in fitness, there has to be a managed process of exceeding your capabilities in order to push them, but not exceeding them so far that you're increasing your risk of injury. And it's a very delicate balance that needs to be played.
Yeah, and I think I will point out that, like I said, I know people say, well, you're going to get hurt if you do CrossFit. I'm like, you get hurt in any sport. I mean, this is the thing, like even little kids, you're talking about kids lifting weights, so it's dangerous. And I had my kids starting to do strength training at 3 and 4 years of age. And, when we look at the, like growth plate injuries and the force dynamics across growth plates, they're at much higher risk running around playing tag or riding their bike than they would be lifting weights. And so we don't think twice about letting the kids run in the backyard and cut and pivot and, play tag and ride their bike and crash their bike. But we certainly, if it comes to, oh my God, your kid's lifting weights, they're gonna hurt themselves. Complete nonsense in my view, as an orthopedic surgeon, by the way.
Yeah. And the other thing too, we're talking about kids particularly, is when they're not lifting weights, what are they doing? How are they learning how to use their body? There's nobody telling them what proper positioning is. So then when you transfer that to, okay, now my kids are going to play sports, and then we have kids getting injuries all over the place, knee injuries, ankle injuries, shoulder, arm injuries, all that kind of stuff, because they've never been trained and built up the strength to actually perform and do these things. So yeah, I think it's absolutely important that kids do stuff.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, the diet is not helping. I think some of the diet, it lends to poor tissue quality. And I look at my kids, which I've got right now, I'm looking at a couple of them. They're very tall, very lanky, very skinny, much as I was. I mean, when I was 6'1", when I went to high school, I was 140 pounds. I was a beanpole. And fortunately, I discovered weightlifting at that time, and I strengthened my joints. And probably as I learned, technique got better over years, but I never in all my years of competing as an athlete, I've never had a major injury. I've had, tweaks and things like that, but I've never injured a joint. Sorry, I'm dealing with one of them arguing with each other right now. So. Anyway, what are your thoughts about when can kids start doing exercise?
I think kids can do exercise as soon as you want them to. I'm not going to take a 2-year-old and give them a barbell, right? But they do have plastic barbell sets that you can give your kids to get them to start doing stuff and getting the movements down. So I mean, as early as you can, you want to have a fitness routine so that you can expose your kids to what it's like to have a fitness routine. So whether they're participating, but at least or not, I can't say, but they need to at least be seeing you do something. I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think examples, one of the things I started with my kids with medicine balls, and I think these medicine balls are so underutilized. I mean, they're such an effective tool.
Yep.
We would just play catch. We'd take like a little, maybe 4 to 6 pound medicine ball, and just throw it and catch back and forth, and that teaches them how to absorb force and deliver force, and you do that type of thing. But I thought that was very effective. What does the so what, I guess I didn't get a chance. So describe a little more your current situation. We talked about the past, the CrossFit. So what are you doing day to day now? How are you interacting with folks? So online, what are you offering folks?
So I do some coaching, one-on-one, in person, or at the gym. I do some group coaching at this gym that's local, but primarily I'm focused on an online at-home workout program. So Apex at Home, my brand is Apex Training System. And I basically have an app that I give people. They subscribe to it on a monthly basis, and I provide 5 workouts a week. Goes complete warm up through a strength piece, conditioning piece, cool down piece. There's videos. I'm engaged. It's a community, so everybody that's subscribed can talk and chat and share information. We're doing 2 live workouts a week, so I can actually have a chance to get eyes on people and help them with movement, things like that. So that's where my focus is right now.
Yeah, and I guess do you customize for somebody's particular goals, or is it kind of a general sort of trying to conditioning fitness type of situation?
Yeah, it's a general strength and conditioning program, and the customization piece comes in my interaction. So I basically act as everybody's individual coach. If someone has a question, whether that be, hey, my goal is this, what do I do? Or I have an injury, I can't do this, what do I do? That's what I'm there to provide feedback. So it's a general program, but I help within that group atmosphere, help people kind of modify it and scale it for what works for them.
How do people find out about that? Where are you located at, and where's it?
So on Instagram, I'm at Bronson Dant 72. My website is apxts.com, and the information is there. Those are the 2 best spots. I also have a YouTube channel if you want to look up the Apex Training System on YouTube.
Are you still looking? I mean, is competition anything that's in your future, or do you look at doing any of that type of stuff?
I go back and forth. One day I wake up and I'm like, hey, I want to do this. And the next day I wake up, I'm like, nah, I'm good where I'm at. So I don't know. I don't have anything that's pressing right now. I've thought about maybe getting back into CrossFit more intensely. I've also thought about doing maybe some kettlebell stuff and getting into some kettlebell competition. So I'm kind of in a little limbo area right now with that.
Yeah. Do you feel, I mean, obviously there's age-related classes there, but I mean, do you feel, I mean, relative to where you were before on different diet, do you think this diet has helped your performance overall?
So I started CrossFit about 9 years ago. I'm at the best shape I've been through the whole process. I thought I was in pretty good shape before I started. So I'm doing this for almost 3 years. So about 6 years into CrossFit, I was owning a gym. I thought I was in pretty good shape. And then, like I said, 3-4 months into Carnivore, it just took me to a whole new level. Like, it was like, what is going on here? So I'm 48 years old. I weigh the same as I did when I got out of basic training. My waist is the same size as it was when I got it. So, 30 years. And I feel and I can perform better than when I was in basic training in high school. So
yeah. Did anyone notice this around you and ask what was going on?
Oh, all the time. And then I tell them and they're like, there's no way. It's like, we want what you have, except we don't want to do that. I don't quite get it.
Have you convinced anybody to follow the carnivorous path? And what's the
actually, so my mom and my brother. So my mom is 66 years old. She's been carnivore for almost 2 years. She, along with working with her doctor, so she's been a CrossFit client. So she was a personal trainer. She went to my gym. So I've been working with her as a personal training client essentially for 5 years or so. She has reversed osteoporosis, and her favorite thing right now is to deadlift. So during this whole COVID thing, it's amazing. I've got my 66-year-old mother. She's installed an entire gym in her basement. We got rubber floors down there. We got a universal. We got barbells and dumbbells and all kinds of stuff. And she's down there. She's a member of my program. So, you know, I get to hear her, hey, I just deadlifted this and this is awesome and whatever else. So it's really cool. My brother started probably almost 6 months ago. He came to me and he said, look, you know, he's got colitis. He's got a bunch of other issues that he's got dealing with. And I probably once a week at this point, I get a message from him that he's just like, my mind is blown. I don't understand how I can feel so good. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Do you, you know, we've got, I'll point out, you know, there's several professional athletes that have now adopted this. Do you feel like there's going to be a continued growth in the athletic community with
I hope so.
Diets?
So you're harping on Cam all the time. And I'm a Pats fan. I'm a New England Pats fan. So as soon as we picked him up, I'm like, please somebody tell him to start eating some stinking meat. So I absolutely hope so, because I think the more those types of people do it, the broader the message, the more visual the message is. So yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I really do hope so.
Yeah, we had Danny Sorensen from the Chiefs on, you know, and he's a you know, in Super Bowl starting you know, defensive back, CarnivoreDiet, having a banner year. I mean, he's having one of the best years he's ever had. Looking at his stats, and so
did you tell him to contact Cam?
Well, I mean, I know that like he went to BYU, and one of his teammates contacted me about Danny, and he said there's several of us that are doing this on the, you know, on the down low type of stuff. Yeah. So there's probably a couple guys in the NFL that are doing it that aren't willing to sort of embrace it, just because you know, unfortunately there's a negative connotation if you eat meat, you're somehow a bad person, which is just bizarre to me. But that's something that we have to kind of push back on very, very aggressively, I think.
Right.
All right, man. Well, Bronson, it's good talking to you again. I've got to go take care of these kiddos. We've gone through an hour. Just again, let's put out your Instagram handle and where to find you again.
Okay. At Bronson Dant 72, apxts.com, and on YouTube at the Apex Training System.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. You guys, we'll see you guys back tomorrow. Have a great, don't forget to look at the sky tonight and check out the Saturn Jupiter alignment Christmas star once in every 800 years, because you're not going to, you know, even on a carnivore diet, I don't think you're going to get a chance to see this again. I don't think anybody's going to live more than 800 years. So, all right, guys, take care now. Bye-bye.
See you.